Hi guys, welcome back. Hope you're all doing well. Today I just want to do a little bit of talk with you guys. It's a little bit about the entire gluten-free concept, and it's been a while since I started my channel and I've posted quite a bit of recipes. So I thought this would be the apt time to talk about it. Following a gluten-free diet is not as easy as it seems or sounds. So there's a lot of research, there's a lot of groundwork that one needs to do to make sure that their diet is completely gluten-free. So I'm just going to share with you like a few of the precautions that I take personally to make sure that my meals are gluten-free. So there are a lot of precautions, and I'm not gonna go through it in a lot of detail because that would make like an entire separate video, and I don't want this video to get that long. So I'm gonna cover that in another video, but then now I'm just gonna share the basic stuff that I do. So let's start with one of the basic stuff that I do. So all the masalas that I use and all the spice mixes and the curry powders that I use in my Indian cooking are made from scratch at home. So let's say if it's chili powder, then I would dry roast the chilies, I would cool it, and then I would blend it in a blender to make chili powder. This is the step that I follow for all the masalas that I use. So there is no chance of cross contamination. Now in case I'm buying something from outside, any store-bought ingredient, I would check the labels to make sure that it's gluten-free, or if not, if it's not mentioned, then what I do is I make sure that they have not mentioned this statement on the label, saying that this ingredient was processed in a unit which also processes wheat. So I do all these things to ensure that the ingredients are completely gluten-free. And then the next thing, I don't know how many of you are aware, but asafoetida or hing, which is used in Indian cooking, is like completely wheat-based. So that's a big no-no for a gluten-free diet. Therefore I use a rice-based asafoetida. So even on my blog, like in many of the recipes, I've just mentioned asafoetida, but I later on realized that I have to specify that it's gluten-free asafoetida. So that's another step. And then the third step is we completely avoid cooking gluten at home. So I'm the one who's following the gluten-free diet. The rest of my family is not restricted. But even then, everybody is on the same diet right now because it makes it easy for me to cook. Like I cannot imagine cooking a separate meal for me and then a separate meal for the rest of the family. That just makes it so complicated. So all of us follow the same diet just to simplify things. So we don't cook gluten in our kitchen. We don't buy pasta, noodles, what else? Pizza, bread. Yeah, all the pastries. We don't do anything at home. We don't even cook vermicelli or semolina. So all these are gluten containing products which we completely do not cook at home. Our kitchen is like 90% gluten free. The 10% is for when my family feels like indulging in a gluten dish, and they do buy it from a restaurant and get it into the kitchen. But otherwise there is no gluten in our kitchen, or we don't cook anything that contains gluten. So that ensures that my meals are completely gluten free. So that's like just a gist of how I make sure my meals are completely gluten free. Now moving on to the next point. So I've created like a few questions which would make it easy for me to explain to you guys why I'm on the gluten-free diet and what exactly is going on. So the first question is, what is gluten? So I think to understand everything, first one needs to understand what gluten is. So gluten is basically a protein that's found naturally in grains like wheat, barley, rice, spelt, and this is how it occurs naturally. But unfortunately, in today's times, thanks to all the heavy processing, because the food industry is like heavily processed these days. So because of all the processing, you will find gluten in almost everything that you find in a supermarket. Like for example, chocolates, ice creams, and what else? Even sauces contain gluten. So it's quite taxing on a person who's following a gluten-free diet because they have to be really good with reading the labels. And sometimes gluten even comes hidden under certain under certain names. Like you would see that ingredient in the ingredient list, but it doesn't like clearly state that it's gluten, but it does contain gluten. So you have to be like really smart with identifying where gluten can be hidden and stuff like that, because you will find cross contamination in almost all the products, unless of course they are certified gluten free. But basically, gluten is just a protein that occurs naturally in a few of the grains that I mentioned. And then next part, why are people following a gluten-free diet? So there are many reasons, and I can like sum it up into three reasons. There are a few people who think that a gluten-free diet is healthy. I really don't know if it is. So they follow it with that as the motive. They think that it's healthy and they become healthier being off gluten. So some people follow it for that reason. And then there are others who have gluten intolerance. So gluten intolerance is basically when somebody consumes gluten and they have certain symptoms or allergic reactions, and then they find out that this is because they are consuming gluten, and then they avoid gluten just to avoid those symptoms or reactions. Like I've heard of a few people whose skin breaks out into rashes if they consume gluten. So that is gluten intolerance. And the third set of people would be the category that I fall under. They get diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder called celiac disease. So those people who get diagnosed with celiac disease, the entire gluten-free diet is not an option. It's mandatory if they want to save their health. So this whole celiac disease journey of mine is also a long story, and I don't want to include in this video. Probably later on, if time permits, I will do a separate video on that. But I got diagnosed with celiac disease in July of 2018. And from then on I have started following a gluten-free diet, but I wouldn't say that I was following a strict gluten-free diet immediately. It took me time to understand, to know what all things to know what all I have to avoid and stuff like that. So it did take me some time to follow a strict gluten-free diet. So what exactly is celiac disease now? So celiac disease is basically an autoimmune disorder. So I don't know if I'd be right to say that, my immunity is a bit goofed up, but yes, it's an autoimmune disorder. And basically what happens is when a person with celiac disease consumes gluten, it triggers an autoimmune response in their body, and that leads to certain issues. So I'll just try to like explain it a little more clearly. So basically, let's say that this is the lining of the small intestine, and there are small tentacle like projections that are called villi. So what happens is when a person with celiac disease consumes gluten, it causes an autoimmune response in their body. And so basically their immunity sees the gluten as a foreign object and as a threat to the body. So the immunity starts attacking the gluten that's been consumed, and in the process, sadly, it also attacks these tentacle like projections called villi and causes it to erode. So basically what happens is the more and more the person consumes gluten, the more and more the villi erodes. So this is called villus atrophy. And if left undiagnosed and untreated, what can happen is basically the villi can completely flatten and level out with the surface of the small intestine, and that is not good news. So the villi are responsible to absorb all the nutrition from the food that you consume, and when the villi flatten out, basically there's no way for the nutrition to get absorbed, and basically your body will lack vitamins, micronutrients, and all the nutrition that it needs. And if this is left untreated, it can lead to a lot of other complications and a lot of other health issues, and the worst issue being bowel cancer. So it's very, very important to manage celiac disease with a gluten-free diet. So there is no cure for celiac disease. It's a lifelong disease, and there is no vaccination, there is no medicine, there's basically nothing that can be done to heal celiac disease. The only thing that can be done is a person who's diagnosed has to immediately start following a strict gluten-free diet. And this way, the villi in the intestine start healing slowly, and it's a very long process for the villi to heal. A dietitian that I went to told me that it takes up to 2 years for the villi to actually come back to normal, to the normal level. So that's the reason why I'm on a gluten-free diet. And a gluten-free diet is not very easy to follow. In fact, it is a very tedious and taxing and time consuming process. So basically, those who are diagnosed with celiac disease cannot take it lightly. We cannot eat out or dine out at restaurants, especially restaurants where they're still using wheat flour or all-purpose flour. The reason being, there's a high risk of cross-contamination, and for a person with celiac disease, even like the tiniest bit of gluten is bad. It's really bad. So let's say, for example, we're going to a pizza shop and they make gluten-free pizza as well as normal pizza. So when they prepare the dough for the normal pizza, the flour particles will be suspended in the atmosphere, and when they prepare the gluten-free pizza, some of the flour dust that's suspended in the atmosphere is gonna settle down on the pizza. So that is what is called cross-contamination. And like I said, even trace amounts of gluten is really bad for someone with celiac disease. So that's how serious it is. I generally do not eat out at anybody's place either. If anyone invites us, I politely apologize and tell them that I will not be able to eat what they prepare, and I just pack my own meal. I let the rest of my family dine there, but I have my own meal always. So it is difficult to follow this diet, and it's quite difficult to come to terms with all the restrictions and all the things that you have to give up on because you have to follow this diet. But yeah, it has its own positive side. Like, I feel blessed that I'm a South Indian because we have a lot of staple foods that are naturally gluten free. So I did not have to struggle to think of what to eat, because we eat rice regularly, and that is completely naturally gluten free. So in a way, I felt blessed to be a South Indian at that point when I was diagnosed. But yes, there are certain things that we have to give up on, and so traveling becomes a challenge. Definitely, because the moment you step out of your house, you cannot trust any place for your food. Everything might probably be contaminated with gluten. So it gets very tricky to manage all these things. But yeah, it takes time to get a hang of it, and somehow I have adapted now. Yeah, traveling is still a challenge for me, and I haven't traveled much since I got diagnosed. So what causes celiac disease? They say it's genetic, but none of my family members had any issues. They never had any digestive issues. They never had any autoimmune issues. So I really don't know if it's genetic, because I'm still trying to figure out like how it is genetic. But one thing I did think of was so I did consume a lot of gluten since my childhood days, which none of my ancestors did, or neither did my parents, because our traditional foods are mostly naturally gluten free. So my ancestors have always like consumed more of rice based foods rather than gluten, and I was the first person in my family to get exposed to so much of gluten. That could be one of the reasons why I showed symptoms, and probably none of my ancestors did. But yeah, we still don't know what the real picture is. So these are the things that I wanted to share in this video, and I also want to create a little bit of awareness about celiac disease, because not too many people have heard of it. So I hope this video was informative for you, and I hope this video helps a lot of people. And in case you want to ask me something more on the things that I've spoken of, please do leave a comment below and I'll reply back. So anyway, it was nice talking to you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit and listen patiently to whatever I had to say. And I'll see you soon in another video. Till then, bye. Take care.